Let me share with you a passage that might unsettle you, inspire you, or leave you in wonder. It's a teaching from the Gospel of Thomas, a text that is not part of the canonical Gospels, but offers profound insights into spiritual transformation and self-realization. Listen carefully. When you make the two into one, and make the inner like the outer and the outer like the inner, and the upper like the lower, and so make the male and the female a single one, so that the male won't be male nor the female female. When you make eyes in the place of an eye, a hand in the place of a hand, a foot in the place of a foot, and an image in the place of an image, then you'll enter the kingdom. This is one of the most profound and mysterious teachings from the Gospel of Thomas, a collection of sayings attributed to Jesus, preserved outside the canonical Gospels. It's not a straightforward parable or a moral lesson. It's an invitation to look deeper, to challenge how we see ourselves, the world, and the very nature of reality. And that's what we'll explore today, a radical interpretation of this passage and the truths it points toward. Now let's start by grounding ourselves in the history of this text. The Gospel of Thomas is part of a mystical tradition within early Christianity, one that often gets overshadowed by the more structured doctrines of the Church. The Gospel of Thomas was discovered in 1945 in a jar near Nag Hammadi in Egypt. Unlike the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Gospel of Thomas isn't concerned with miracles or historical events. Instead, it offers teachings designed to awaken something within us, a direct insight into the divine nature of existence. In the opening line of this Gospel, the author reveals, "These are the secret sayings that the living Jesus spoke and which Didymos Judas Thomas wrote down." This particular passage, Logion 22, is a clear example of that. On the surface, it might seem cryptic or poetic, but if we look closer, it's pointing to something extraordinary, the collapse of duality and the realization of unity. It's not asking us to do something or believe something, it's asking us to see something, to recognize a truth that's already here. Let's begin with the first line, when you make the two into one. This is the foundation of the teaching. What are the two? They are the pairs of opposites that define our experience, self and other, inner and outer, subject and object. From the moment we're born, we live in a world of division. There's me here and the world out there. There's light and dark, good and bad, male and female. These opposites feel real. They shape how we navigate life. But what this teaching suggests is that these divisions are illusions. They're constructs of the mind, not the nature of reality itself. To make the two into one is to see through this illusion. It's to realize that the apparent opposites we live by are not separate, but expressions of the same underlying unity. The inner and the outer, the self and the world, they're not two things interacting. They're two faces of one seamless existence. Now consider the line, make the inner like the outer and the outer like the inner. We often think of the inner world as our thoughts, emotions, and private experiences, and the outer world as the physical reality we perceive. But where is the line between inner and outer? Is the sensation of your hand touching a table inside or outside? Is the thought of a tree separate from the tree you see? If you look closely, you'll find that the boundary is fuzzy, arbitrary even. The inner and outer arise together, inseparable. The same is true for the line, make the upper like the lower, and the male and the female a single one. Here, the teaching points to deeper archetypes of duality, hierarchy, upper, lower, and polarity, male, female. These aren't just physical distinctions. They're mental constructs that shape how we view the world. Male and female, active and passive, positive and negative. They seem opposed, but in truth, they are complementary aspects of the same whole. To make them one is to transcend the categories entirely, to see that life is not defined by opposites, but by the unity in which those opposites arise. And then comes one of the most intriguing lines. Make eyes in the place of an eye, a hand in the place of a hand, a foot in the place of a foot, and an image in the place of an image. What does this mean? It's an invitation to transform perception. To see not with the narrow perspective of a single eye, but with the clarity of unity. To act not from the sense of being a separate self controlling the body, but as an expression of the wholeness in which all arises. To replace the mental image of the world with the direct experience of what is, free of labels, free of separation. Finally, we come to the promise, then you'll enter the kingdom. The kingdom here isn't a place. It's not a reward for moral behavior or a distant realm to be reached after death. It's a state of being, a realization. The kingdom is the recognition that there is no separation, no self and other, no inner and outer, no male and female. There is only the infinite, indivisible field of being, expressing itself in countless forms, and you are that. You've always been that. Now let's step back and address why this teaching can feel so unsettling. For those who believe in a God out there, separate from themselves, this teaching challenges the very foundation of their belief. It says, God is not a distant entity to worship. God is the unity in which all things arise. And for those who reject the idea of God entirely, associating it with religion and dogma, this teaching is equally challenging. It says, look deeper. What you think of as you is not what you are. The self you've identified with is a construct, a wave on the ocean of awareness. But here's the beauty of it. This teaching doesn't ask you to believe anything. It doesn't demand faith. It invites you to look, to question the boundaries you take for granted, the divisions that feel so real. Where does the inner end and the outer begin? Where does you stop and the world start? If you truly look, you'll find that these boundaries dissolve, and what's left is not a void, but a profound sense of wholeness, a kingdom here and now. This teaching isn't about abandoning the world or denying its beauty. It's about seeing the world for what it truly is, a play of form within the infinite field of being. The inner and outer, the male and female, the upper and lower, they don't disappear. They're simply seen as expressions of the same unity, no longer separate, no longer opposed. And here's the most radical part. This realization is not something to achieve. It's not a goal to strive for. It's already true. The two have always been one. The kingdom has always been here. The invitation is simply to see it, to recognize what has always been. And when you do, everything changes. Not because the world becomes different, but because you see that it was never divided to begin with.